Welcome to another episode of the Love to Move podcast, where we take a look at all the definitions of the word move and tell you why we love them. Today, we have a very, very interesting episode. You might have heard about different dimensions. You might have heard about meditation, spirituality. We're going to get into a lot of these topics rather deeply. We're going to talk about the 12th dimension. We're going to talk about really how do you stay present in the moment while extending your awareness and understanding what your actions now will do to the future. Today, we're going to be talking about how you move through life and your awareness as you're moving through life. My guest is Fernandez, and she has an amazing story. We're going to be discussing her book, the link to which will be in the show notes. But truly, this talk and her book gives you an appreciation of what we have in life and actually how much is within our control because we have a choice. And that is something that Anna's going to talk about more. I hope that you join me in welcoming Anne Fernandez. We get to do it in person. I always love the in-person ones. Like I tell you, it's better. I don't even know where to start with your story because there's just so much along all of it. And I read the book, Moonlight, Palmwire, and so interesting. And immediately within the first few chapters, you get this sense of, oh, I'm very privileged, aren't I? I shouldn't complain about anything ever in my life. Right. Just even talking about the walls of the huts made in Trinidad, made with cow dung and dirt and mud. Let's start there. Reflecting back on it, is that something you revisit often in terms of thinking, oh my goodness, where I came from, and how to be grateful? Or at this point, it's just such a cognizant practice of gratitude and presence that you don't have to necessarily reflect back to that.
I think it's all of the above. Mm-hmm. Everything you said pretty much, but especially lately, these last few years of my life, more people ask me the question, so where'd you come from? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I go back to that space. Right. And then I have that moment of like, wow. Because it was so long ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was 15 when I left, so I took in a lot of that energy and that experience there. But so much has occurred throughout my life since then that when I'm reminded of it, I'm even like, wow, you lived like that? Mm-hmm. And look at you now, But I do feel that because of that experience, I have always been in gratitude for everything. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, I'll share this story. I remember even walking down a sidewalk in LA and everything is cemented. And there's this one little flower coming out of the sidewalk and how my awareness just went to that. And I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to say is I think having that experience, you automatically notice the things that are beautiful and that are positive and that are right instead of like, what's wrong?
Mm-hmm. And I liked that in all the scenarios, even when back in Trinidad you had the plum tree. When you moved to the States, there was a palm tree. There was always various. You found these kind of small parts of nature, no matter how devoid of nature, and even in your store with a flower, there's just a flower on right. No matter how devoid or full of nature or a certain situation, you kind of found a place where you could kind of connect with it. I know that you in general love nature. Yeah. How do you go about finding that little place for yourself where you go, okay, this is my little place right. to connect with nature? Is that a feeling that you generally have, or?
So it's just my love of nature. Right. And I think, again, I have to go back to growing up with that. Mm-hmm. When you are in your formative years and you're exposed to something, that becomes a part of you. You embody that. And whether you remember it or not, it's now a part of who you are. It's your makeup. Mm-hmm. So it feels very natural. So I could be at the beach. I could be at the desert. I could be, like you said, in a city. And yes, for a moment, I'm noticing, the buildings. I'm noticing, the cars going by. But my eyes always find that one tree or that one flower or that one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say it's just sort of innate because I grew up with that. I didn't have a TV for a long time. And when we did, it was a little black and white, television. We didn't have electricity for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Even water I used to bring in a bucket, on my head. So all I had was nature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you depended on nature. There was a symbiotic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The plants fed us, took care of us, and we took care of and had this sacredness, or we honored our environment, our natural environment around us.
Very interesting. Speaking of the environment around us, this is a fun question that I had to ask, and I had to do extra research about the weather patterns and climate of Trinidad. What was it like for you experiencing your first snow?
Oh, wow! Nobody's ever asked me that. That's good. Yeah, because of course I grew up in the tropics, and by 10 a.m. you were done with all your work, and the rest of the day you were lying in hammocks until the evening again, right? But my first experience with snow was when we moved to California.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the whole family. So at that point, we were still what I consider very poor. I mean, we were just struggling and just making ends meet. And so an outing would be the family. Everybody gets in the car and you drive somewhere to a park or a river. We were still always, the whole family, always looking for nature somewhere. And so I remember we drove up to, I'm trying to remember exactly where it was. But anyway, the first place we discovered there was snow, and we had these rubber tubes and plastic bags and, things that we could afford to have. And I just remember having such a blast because you're right. This was nature, but something I had never experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
But it just felt like this immediate connection. There was no like, oh, wow, this is really different from what I experienced. This was like, this is all one. It's all nature, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, whatever it is, the environment.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt this natural connection with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember having just a blast, with my whole family. So that was my first experience with snow.
Very interesting. Coming from a Russian who I grew up with snow, and then we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, of all places, and I thought this place is devoid of snow. What is wrong with this? We got a little bit.
So it was the opposite.
It was the opposite, very much so.
Okay, yeah.
The beach has always been one of those places where I loved it, but it was new.
Yeah.
And to a degree, we're sometimes used to rock beaches as well, and it was kind of just different.
Right.
But at the same time, we also grew up driving to Florida a lot, so then we got used to the beach, and that was kind of there. Yeah. But being Russian, my skin burned. It was always just the question of how badly you were burned, not if you were burned.
Right.
That was the reality of it.
Well, I know this is kind of off the subject a little bit, but touching on that, people assume because my father's from India, so he's very dark. Mm-hmm. My mother's from England, she's very white. And so I have sort of that in-between olive skin, and people always say, oh, you could probably spend all day in the sun and you'd be fine. I'm like, no, trust me, it doesn't matter. And I did spend a lot of my life, obviously, growing up at the beach, in the islands. Mm-hmm. And even when I moved to Florida from the islands as well, spent a lot of time in the sun and in the ocean there. But I enjoyed the snow. Mm-hmm. It took a while for me to acclimate because now all of a sudden I'm wearing 3 layers and hats and something I wasn't used to. But I really, really loved it. I took up skiing. Even cross-country skiing, and so just embraced it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up your parents, because I think there's, just in general, your childhood and the upbringing, the environment in which you were in, was very much a mixture of cultures, religions, just everything. You were exposed to so many different things. I've read the book. I know, but for people that may not know, can you give us a little taste of what it was like? Up to before you moved to the States, of what that environment was like in terms of the cultures and everything.
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, boy, I should probably be confused because there was so much I was exposed to. But embracing it all and now being able to apply it, in my life and helping my clients the way I do now, all of that really, I was so glad that I had that experience. Because here's the great thing: when you're having an experience and you don't have something else to compare it to, this is it. This is what you have. This is what you know, right? And so my father was Muslim and his family were Muslim. My mother was Catholic. She was the only white person in the village. She came from England. Her parents had some money. She came on vacation. My father was this poor taxi driver. He picked her up. She never left. So she moved to the village, and she practiced her Catholic, religion. He practiced his Muslim religion. And in our household, we would have the priest, the imam, we'd have all the people from both religions in our household celebrating. So as a child, I never knew that there's a difference, because it's community.
Right.
And then around us, they were all Hindus, which, by the way, I have to admit that I was really attracted to the Hindu religion because they were always dancing and playing tablas. Everything was a celebration. When someone was born, when someone died, it was a wedding, celebration. So I tend to kind of follow that a lot. And the great thing about being in a small community in a village was you were allowed to participate in all of that. So when I came here, I actually initially went to college thinking, I was going to study religion. I was fascinated with the fact that there was such separation, at least when I came here, with the different religions. You either believe this and join this particular church, or you believe this and you join this particular church. And it was this separation. And I was in awe with that because I thought, why is there a separation? Why is there discord, between everyone? Why are they all celebrating together? And so I set out on a journey to join and participate in just about every religion you could think of. And I actually even got baptized in a lot of them. And the purpose for that for me was to just see, are they saying something different that I should know? Is this one saying something different? And maybe that's why they're separated. And the outcome for me was, no, in the end, they're all saying the same thing. Everybody wants to live a life of love and joy and peace and kindness and compassion. So why is there this separation? So that's when I made a decision that I was spiritual. So I chose that word because I thought, there's nothing wrong with all the beliefs and all the different religions. However, there should not be a separation. And so I chose the word spiritual for me, and that's been my journey. So I am just really happy that I had that experience in my community. And again, and community also, by the way, is something that is very important to me because as much as we all like our space and we like being alone, and that's important, but if we have each other and we support each other and we work together and we collaborate, we're so much more powerful.
It's very true. We really, really are. Even two minds are better than one. We're going to just fling open that door because you saying that you labeled yourself as spiritual is, to some people, they might go, oh, okay, well, maybe she just meditates. But it is such an understatement to say that in your case because of the experiences that you had on that entire journey and the stories that you've told me in the book all together. So let's go all the way deep, because this is the part that I've been probably the most excited to talk to you about. Is the spoiler alert, fifth dimension, 12th dimensions, all the I'm
really
all
want
ears.
to know.
I really want to know, but ease us in. Don't a little bit. Tell us some of those stories that you've kind of mentioned in the book of where you were interacting with some of the, I don't even know the right terminology, of spirits, other people, guides. I'm going to ask you about the Jade Heart story because I thought that was very interesting. And I'm also interested to know what happened to the Jade Heart since you wrote and all of that. But ease us in, because the Jade Heart comes later. How it kind of all started, how you were maybe had a little pushback initially and then evolved more into it.
So you don't want me to just jump to going out of the matrix?
Not yet.
Okay, fine. Well, the spiritual journey. one of the things that I do appreciate about my journey is that every experience I've had has been organic. I had never set out to say, like, okay, I want to understand what it's like to be spiritual. I want to understand what it's like to, connect with the spirit world. I mean, all of these things that I now do and embrace, they just happened organically.
Mhm.
And as I look back, I remember it even happening as a child, and I didn't have words for it. So I didn't have a description that, oh, I was laying in the sugarcane fields looking up at the sky. I didn't realize I was meditating. But now I know that was what meditation was, just being in stillness. And even I remember think I was about 7 or 8, and I woke up from sleep and I noticed a figure at the end of my bed. And it's funny, as a child, even I'm still like this in life. And I do it even when I'm in my meditation. I will say, well, who are you and what do you want? And so I said, well, who are you? And the energy that was there, I couldn't see clearly. It said, well, I'm Jesus. And I said, oh, and why are you here? Because I'm going to be with you for the rest of your life. And I went back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, as a child, I didn't think much about it.
Mm-hmm.
But then the next thing that happened was, so we had this one plum tree in our backyard. And I used to love to just climb up that tree, bare feet, bare hands, just, feeling my way up the tree. And that's another way that I connect with everything around me. It's just like, I could just close my eyes and touch the tree and have that sort of connection. So I remember climbing to the very top of the tree and looking out at the river and the sugarcane fields. And all of a sudden, I had this vision that we were going to America. I was going to marry a man with blonde hair and blue eyes. I was going to have 2 children, a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came down and I went, Mom, Mom. And I said, what? She's busy. And she's like, what? And I said, we're going to America and I'm going to da. And she goes, okay, that's great. And she would tap me on my head, you know. And so, interesting enough, a few years later, my mom being from England, she knew that if we hadn't left the islands, especially the village, that we would all end up working in the sugarcane fields.
Mm-hmm.
But my father, who was born and raised there, he was very afraid of, stepping outside his comfort zone. But she convinced him, and a few years later, she actually applied for us to go to England and to America. And it came through for us to come to America.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go forward for a minute, and I ended up meeting the guy with blonde hair and blue eyes and having a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't even make the connection till years later, like, oh, wow, I did have that vision.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is, all of the experiences were just organic and just innate. But as I grew older, as I came to the States and started having more of those, something would happen in my outer world. So I'd have these experiences in my inner world, and then something would show up in my outer world that says, okay, this is what's going on. This is the explanation. You want the knowledge so that you can understand what you just experienced. So here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And for years, that kept happening one after the other. A book would show up. Something would show up after I had just come out of having one of those experiences and saying, here's the proof.
Mm-hmm.
You're okay. We don't have to put you away. But it was difficult for me to start sharing because I would hear people talking about and calling things woo-woo and having this terminology for things. And so I would sort of hold back. But moving forward, so I'm in America, I'm going through the teenage years, being thrown into a culture, not having any guidance, and finding my way, but making mistakes, going down the wrong path. But there was always something, and I still don't know how to explain it. I can only say perhaps it was a spiritual guide, perhaps it was my higher awareness, but something that kept me safe. Because on that journey, especially as a teenager, I could have been killed. I could have stepped off the edge many, many times. But something always brought me back to center, and I found my way. So years later, I'm married to the guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, and I have my children. And then the experience really started to build. They became more intense. Everyone would be asleep, and I would wake up at 3 o'clock every night, 3 o'clock, and I would say, well, I want to go back to sleep, just to myself, quietly saying, I just want to go back to sleep. And then I would hear a voice within myself saying, not until you write. And I would argue with this voice, well, what do you mean write? I'm not a writer. What do you mean write? I just want to go back to sleep. So finally, I picked up a pad and pencil, and I would start writing like poetry or just whatever came through at the time, and put it down. Sometimes it would be a half a page, and then I could go right back to sleep. And then the other things that started happening was people who passed. All of a sudden, I would be busy doing dishes or doing laundry, just in a zone, doing something else. And they would be standing right there in front of me, just like you are sitting in front of me. And that happened quite a few times. And so I remember I got out of the shower at the gym one time, and I opened the door, and there was my husband's grandmother who had passed. And she just said, I just wanted to say hi and thank you. And I'm so proud of you. And I'm standing there with my jaw, did this really happen? Okay. And then it happened again and again. And so I just started to accept it as normal. Okay, this is normal. I see dead people. So I hate to use that terminology, but I had to go there.
Yeah.
So that started occurring. So here I'm having, seeing people who have passed. And then I started doing classes at my mom's house, and she would invite her friends over, and I would just do a little guided meditation with them. And then all of a sudden I was guided to close my eyes and sort of just scan their bodies. I never read a book, didn't even know what it was, but I started doing it. And so everyone was in. They were like, wow, what is this? This is cool. And I remember my mom's friend, that I had my hands, over her chest. And all of a sudden, I saw, with my eyes closed, I saw gray. And I just knew she was going to pass. And so I was scared. I came out of that and I went, I don't want to know this. And so I talked to my mom afterwards, and I said, is your friend okay? Oh, yeah, she's fine. She just had her test. She's okay. Well, 6 months later, she died of lung cancer. So, but that, instead of moving forward and going, okay, that's a gift, how do I use this? I had no guidance. So instead I kind of, shut down. I don't want to know when someone is going to pass.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no way I'm going to tell you. Oh, by the way, So, I'm laughing now about it because I'm laughing at myself, really,
Right.
as I remember the process, of like, there's no way. But things like that kept occurring over and over again. And so I almost felt like it was this path that was opened up. And as I took each step, it became stronger and stronger. So then a few years later, after my divorce, in my own space with my children, I would be waking up at nights with my bed shaking. And I would think, okay, I'm in California, it's probably an earthquake. And then I would check the next day, no earthquake, But then this kept getting more and more intense. And we could talk for hours about these incidents that happened. But then I would open my eyes and I would see different colors, almost like different bubbles of colors just floating around in my room. It sounds like a psychedelic experience, right? I swear I wasn't taking any drugs then. Those days were way before. But anyway, it was, I would open my eyes and see these colors moving in front of me. And I remember being so groggy and wanting to sleep. One night I remember just reaching my hand out like this, and my hands just buzzed. It was like I had touched one of these little things that were floating around, and my hands were just buzzing with energy. But I was so sleepy, I just kind of, drifted back to sleep. And then the next time, there was a being standing at the foot of my bed and said, you want to go back to sleep? I said, yes, please. Okay, then you have to give a message to this person I was a good friend with. And I said, no, there's no way. They're going to think I'm completely insane. Well, do you want to go back to sleep? And I'm having this conversation with this being that looks like an old priest from back in Ireland somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, fine. What's the message? Gave me a message. And the next day, I mean, I was so nervous, but I said, I'm going to do this because I want to get sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to my friend, hey, this priest showed up, and I kind of tweaked it a little bit so it didn't sound so crazy. And I gave the message. Oh, yes, that sounds like a priest that I grew up with. And he used to always talk to me when I was a little boy. And I went, oh, great. So it was those type of experiences that kept happening over and over and over again, and especially the shaking of the bed. And I finally felt so alone in my world because back then, not like we are now. Now you can have these conversations with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
But back then I felt very alone on this journey. And I thought, what do I do with all of this? I remember sleeping on the couch one night and woke up to this smell. And I wish I could find the words to describe it to you. It was the smell woke me up and I could feel it going in through my nostrils into my whole body. And it was the sweetest smell I have ever smelled in my life. And since then I've been trying to it doesn't exist, right? So I woke up and there's a shimmering golden light in my room. And I sat up on the couch and I said, who are you? And he said, I'm Michael the Archangel and I'm here to protect you. And I went, okay. And I went back to sleep. So the next experience I had was sometimes I'm not sure if I'm falling asleep into a dream or I'm meditating, but I'm in that space. Mm-hmm. I'm out of the monkey mind. And I remember going into this room and all it had was a coffee table with a little box. And I could feel the energy was very Asian. Mm-hmm. And so the being or the voice that spoke to me was very Asian, like Buddhist, and said, that's for you. So I open the box and there's a green jade heart in there. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do I do with this? And he said, because you have a big heart, this will always remind you that you have a good heart, you have a big heart, and that you will share love with people that are around you. Okay. So then I have to say that whenever I have these experiences the next day or not too long after, my monkey mind is going, what does that mean? Is that real? Was that, it's like always searching for some answer. Mm-hmm. So I'm all about integrating the knowledge with the experience. And then to me it becomes powerful. And then I go, okay, this is what it is. And here's how I can apply it. So about a week later, I think it was, I'm in a store looking for meditation music. There's this green heart sitting on a shelf, exactly like I saw it, right? I know. And I mean, my eyes were just, big. And so I walked up to the guy and I thought, oh, this is going to be expensive. And I said, how much is that? And he goes, I just told him something ridiculous, like $5 or whatever. I said, I'll take it. Dusted it off and took it home. And then something happened when I held it in my hand. It was like, it made the connection. I was in alignment with the experience I had. Mm. So I then knew that it was meant for me, that there was some message here and that it was meant for me. And I still have it. I should have brought it today and showed it to you. And so I have it sitting next to me whenever I'm working with someone, because I believe that no matter whatever knowledge and wisdom I have and experiences I had, when I come from my heart, that everything works out. That whatever my clients need to hear is always right for them whenever I do it from my heart. But I want to share with you, being in that space of feeling so alone, I was searching for a place to go so I could understand more of this. Mm-hmm. And so I found the Monroe Center in Virginia. And funny thing is that I didn't have the money. It's like, okay, how am I going to go there? And I'm talking to my dad, and I said, I would love to go to this place. Here's a plane ticket. I called the place and I said, how much is it to be there for a week? And it was X amount of dollars. And I went, oh. And immediately, as I said, oh, she said, but someone just canceled, and you can just take their place. It won't cost you anything. Talk about alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why I believe that everything is here to help us if we're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a week at the Monroe Institute. They took your watch, your phone, everything away. They didn't have clocks anywhere, so I didn't know, you never knew what time it was. And the whole experience for that week was you meditated, you went for walks in nature, you'd walk in nature, and in the evenings you'd gather with the group and share your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most powerful time that I've had. Talk about getting in tune with what I call a natural rhythm, because we have a natural rhythm within us that is the same, that is in nature, that's around us. But as you and I both know, all of us have been so separated from that because, we work, we pay our bills, we live our lives, we have appointments, we live by the clock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we have to be a part of that. But the trick is, how do we still remember that rhythm? How do we still live from that place and apply it and be in our everyday life?
Mm-hmm.
So I was reconnected to that by being in this place, not depending on time or clocks or anything like that. And I'll share one quick experience I had there. I remember gathering with the people at night, and everybody sharing their experience. And so I said, I'm still holding back, but I was like, okay, I was in meditation and I was just zooming through this beautiful place, feeling like I could fly like a bird, and it was beautiful. And all of a sudden there was this wall in front of me. And I remember saying, I want to go further. Why is this wall in front of me? And then I heard a voice that said, put on your crown.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, what? What do you mean put on my crown? And literally in that meditation, there's a crown in my hand. And so I'm talking to the voice saying, a crown? I don't deserve a crown. I can't wear a crown. Well, I'm arguing with this voice. And so, just like I am in life, like, prove it to me, So I said, finally, I do want to go through. And I literally remember putting that crown on my head, and the wall just fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to move forward. And the experience I had was just a lightness in my body, no thinking mind, no concerns, just a wonderful, beautiful experience. And so when I came back from that and I shared that story, 3 people said, I saw you. I was having this experience and I saw you and you were wearing a crown. And then one other person said, and I saw you like an eagle and you flew off this. So anyway, there was the thinking mind, going, wait a minute, what is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized that when we can allow ourselves to get out of our thinking mind, when we can move beyond that, move more into our intuition, which I call our sixth sense.
Mm-hmm.
We've come to believe that we just have the 5 senses. But we have another sense called the sixth sense. Movie made about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so intuition, moving into that other energy level within us that we all have access to, allows us all to connect with each other. And that's when I started to believe and to realize that we are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, all of us are connected. And it's only when we go into that stillness and that quiet space that we can reconnect. So it made sense to me that all of us are in this space. We're all meditating for 7 days, right? We're meditating for hours and we're having these experiences. So it made sense then that we all connected at some point.
Yeah. Takes me back to, I did a 10-day silent meditation retreat right after physical therapy school. I finished PT school and I said,
I believe I passed the test and everything. And then I said, okay, that's it. For the next month, no physical therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to read about it, think about it, talk about it, just for the next month.
Right.
None. And so I went. And that it really is quite an experience. We didn't get to talk at all.
Wow.
We didn't get to share anything. It was 10 hours of meditation every single day.
Oh.
And it was just all in silence.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting experience getting out of it, because coming out of it, first of all, if you ever go to anything like that, you're surrounded by interesting people.
Yes.
Because the people that do those
Yeah.
things, they're not your everyday office workers. It's just not.
Right.
There's something more. They're
Right.
searching for something.
Right.
So inevitably there is, I came to find out so many interesting stories about the people around me. But that initial hour and a half after we were allowed to talk, that we kind of said, okay, it's now dinner.
Yeah.
The 10 days have passed. You can all now converse. I didn't talk. I sat back. It was so loud to me, everybody talking. I said, I'm okay for now. And it was only later when we were kind of in our rooms that I started to interact with people and talk with them. And that was very interesting.
Wow, that's
But
powerful.
I want to ask you something that's kind of maybe a little bit more practical for people. Being in alignment sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I think we may lie to ourselves about alignment. We may think, yes, this aligns with me. Eating a donut aligns with me very well because it's sugary and delicious, and that is what I need and want, and that is exactly it. How do we discern and know that things are more so in dissonance than they are necessarily in alignment with us? Because I know jumping from dissonance all the way to alignment, that's a stretch to do immediately.
Sure.
But how do we start to bring awareness that something is not as right? We may think it's alignment, but that's probably not actually alignment.
Right. Good question. So may I jump back for a quick second to when you were saying you came out of the silence?
Oh, yeah.
I just have to share quickly that I moved from the city, and up into the mountains. So my backyard is the woods. So now I'm into that energy and into that space. And coming down here today into the city to visit with you, I had that exact same thing. The noise, when you said for the hour and a half, you couldn't, you didn't want to talk. Everything was so noisy, so I had to do exactly that. I sat in my car for a moment and I took a breath and I found that space and I went, I'm okay wherever I am. I'm centered wherever I am. And I think that's the key, is to apply all of these things so that if we have to be in a city, if we have to be in the middle of, God forbid, war, whatever it is, that we can be okay. So moving on to, what you were talking about. So there's so much I can say about that, is that having something consistent, where you practice, whether it's 5 minutes of meditation a day, whether you say mantras, whether you do yoga, but having a consistent practice where you get to be in that quiet space. It's almost like using weights to exercise your muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do it once, right? If you want to develop these muscles, you don't just go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
You do it consistently. It's the same thing. I actually like to look at developing intuition, developing that ability to discern things, just that knowing as an inner muscle.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unseen. We see this, we don't see that, but we feel it, we sense it. Mm-hmm. And then we get results that prove to us that we are in alignment, right? So to me, the big word that always comes up is trust.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first sense something and you're like, oh, I should put this cup over here, because if I put it here, it's going to fall off the counter and break. Just something as simple as that. There's always something. Once you develop that ability, there's always that very quiet voice inside you that will guide you in the right direction. Now, I have to say that a lot of times the thinking mind overpowers that. Go, no, put the cup over here because I'm busy and I have to walk out the door right now, and then you've made the wrong decision. So as far as discernment, I would say having a practice and developing that ability. Mm-hmm. And then you do get to a point where you don't even have to think about it. You have the thought, you have the guidance, you have the feeling, and you follow it. And just trusting it. Mm-hmm. once you trust in yourself, to me, that's one of the most powerful things we can do, is to come to that point in life where we trust ourselves completely. We trust our own inner guidance, or, you can call it your higher awareness. You can call it your soul. You can call it your heart. You can call it God. It doesn't matter. It's just trusting that. And then you see the results time after time. And then 100% that you are in alignment. That is your inner guidance. And at this phase of my life, when I work with people, what I want more than anything else, the gift I want to give them, is empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to know that they don't have to depend on me or anyone else out there. They might need me or other people for that guidance to get to that place, but that everyone already has that ability and that power to use their intuition, to be in alignment, to have clarity on their path in their life, on purpose. It's already there. It's like having this filing system of all this information. Here's everything you need. Here's the blueprint. But you've never learned how to open that. You've never learned how to look into it. You've never learned how to trust it.
Mm-hmm.
And so with my work, that is what I do. I get people to that point to where they can truly understand that there it is, right there. I'm just opening that door for you and showing you how to get there.
To my, inevitably due to my parents' upbringing of me, scientific mind, my immediate thing that I'm thinking there of how I will be testing it for myself, and maybe this would be helpful to you guys, is I'm thinking of asking the question why, because we always go, okay, well, why did I put the cup there? And if you're seeking for the question why, and you're looking for the question why, and you want a very specific answer, that means you don't trust yourself. But I think that if you ever get to the point of where the answer is because, and that's it,
yes.
that's the intuition, where you don't have to answer that question.
Right.
You're like, because that's it. That was the answer.
Right.
Which is really hard for us to get to. And I think we're all seeking the answers now where we know I need a specific, give me a research study with a bunch of participants of why I put the cup there,
Right.
which that's not necessarily always true. Sometimes that is your truth and your answer.
I love that, the why. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's key. When we keep asking why, which I did in the beginning, why is this here? What, and then I would say what, and that shifted things a bit for me. And then I came into, it is what it is. And once I started following that, everything would line up. And I'm not saying I'm in that place every day.
Right.
But through my meditation, and I'm very visual and very physical. I move, I hike, so moving my body helps me and reminds me also. So I have a thing that I do if I'm in the midst of a mall and it's a lot of chaos happening and I feel like I'm being pulled off center, I might pretend I'm stretching so people don't know what I'm doing. And I just reach out and I go, pull all that energy back into my heart center. And just that movement, all of a sudden, I'm good. I'm still aware of what's going on around me, but I am centered. So I'm in my space. It's we give away so much of our energy sometimes when we don't realize it. We allow people in our outer world to and the things that are going on obviously right now in our world, right, to pull us away from that center. Watching the news, you get so caught up in all the craziness out there. And then people start they don't realize that they have been pulled into that they have given up their energy to that. So what are they left with? Sadness, depression. People are feeling pain. They're feeling all these things and they don't know why. And here's the why. The why is that they're listening to a lot of people saying a lot of negative things, and they allow themselves to get pulled down that path. The wonderful thing I love about life in this world and the human bodies, we have choice. We always have choice. And every day I make a choice. And I even have people that will say, well, don't you care about what's going on in the war? Don't you care about people doing this and doing that? And I said, I'm aware of it. I am fully aware of it. But I am choosing to take this path. I'm choosing to stay on my path, to stay in alignment. I'm choosing to stay in a path of holding a space of love and peace and compassion. Yes, it's easy. I'm a fighter. I could jump in there and start, doing this. But I'm choosing. And I think that's the thing when you know that, wow, I have a choice. I'm going to turn off the TV. I'm going to sit for 5 minutes and do nothing. I'm going to choose to go down that path.
Mhm. This ties in so beautifully into a story that I think is so important. This combines the question of why, especially the question of why me.
Yeah.
It combines the idea of choice.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the story of being diagnosed with rheumatoid and osteoarthritis,
Oh,
and
wow.
and yeah, really being thrown off kilter in that moment,
Yeah.
and how you went about all of that?
You just reminded me that I have that. Or at least somebody told me I have that. So, yeah, I mean, I used to run. I mean, I was a scuba diver, hiking, working with inner city kids at camps, having them climb something. I'm holding the rope, just doing all these amazing things in my life. And then all of a sudden one day I started feeling, some pain in my thumb and my toes. And it's like, finally, it's like, okay, go have a checkup, go check it out. And so I will always remember this day. I'm waiting for the doctor to come back. And he said, well, you have osteoarthritis and you have rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, what's that? I know what osteoarthritis is,
Mhm.
but what is rheumatoid arthritis? Well, that's an autoimmune disease. That means that your body is going to fight against everything, your glands, your organs, your heart, your lungs, it's just constantly fighting everything. And he says, but luckily we do have a medication for that we can give you right now.
Mhm.
And I remember saying, hold on, I'll be back. I went out to my car and I closed the door and I just screamed really loud. And I did exactly what you said about the why. I went, why me? And I remember crying. And it's like, because all these thoughts were swirling around my mind. Like, now my life is going to change because now I can't hold that rope anymore. Now I can't do all these things that I love doing, and literally for about 6 months. So, by the way, I decided this voice was so loud, and I'm going to call it my intuitive voice or my aware self or higher self.
Hmm.
But it was so loud. There was no doubt. There wasn't like discernment, didn't even come into play. Don't take the medicine. And so I went home and I was just upset. I was crying. I was, my life has changed. I was being human. And for about 6 months, I remember I was laying on my couch and I was in a lot of pain then. So it was the beginning stages of all of this. So I was in severe pain and I wasn't sure what to do. And I was feeling like a victim, like, woe is me. And again, why me? Just arguing with the universe, These are all the things I do. I'm a good person. Why did this happen to me? And as I'm going through that process, finally, one day I remember I said, okay, you teach people how to meditate. You talk about alignment. You talk about all of these things. Why don't you try applying that now? And that voice came up and I sat up on my couch and it was really hard because I was in a lot of physical pain and I just kind of went into meditation. And that brought me through because I wanted to die. I didn't want to be in that body anymore. It was so painful.
Mm.
I couldn't open my car door. I was told maybe I wouldn't be able to drive anymore, things like that. And so finally, I started slowly coming out of it. And I applied everything I have ever taught anyone to do. Physician, heal thyself, right? And so I started journaling. And the journaling was very, very powerful for me. Whatever came through, I just wrote it down. I didn't stop and analyze it. I just wrote it down. It was like a pouring out of emotions and feelings and things I probably held in my body for years that I didn't know. And so I started journaling. I started writing. I would meditate more, researching. Now I finally did the scientific part of it. I started researching, like, okay, what should I do for this? Change my diet. keep exercising. I always did anyway. Change my diet, exercise, keep meditating, which is what I did anyway, but keep journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied those things, and it took probably about 3 months, maybe even more. After doing that, the pain started to subside. And all of a sudden, I was still able to go for a walk, to go for a hike. I was able to drive my car. And over the next few months, I noticed little by little the shift happening.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, as I look back at that, I realized that when we are healing anything, we have to address all parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I was great at the whole spiritual part. That was a given. And I also liked hiking and walking. I was exercising. And I ate fairly well, but there was a specific diet I should have for the RA.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I applied that, and then the journaling, I didn't realize that there were things that I never allowed to just come out. And when I started journaling, that happened. So I was taking care of my emotions. I was meditating, taking care of the spiritual part of me. I was doing different types of exercise to help my bones and my joints. And I was journaling. I was taking care of all aspects of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what brought me back to wholeness and brought me back into alignment. And, the reason I do this to people now is because, hey, how is your RA? How is that? Well, about 2 years ago, all of a sudden I couldn't close this hand.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to do surgery right away. It's like, okay, here's the date, we're going to do surgery. There was that voice again. Don't do it. By the way, I want to say that I'm not saying never have surgery, don't take drugs. I'm not saying that at all. But I feel that there's a place. It all has its place.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's other options, why not try that first?
Mm-hmm.
So just as I was about to get to that place where maybe I should consider the surgery or learn how to use my left hand.
Right.
And boy, was that a struggle, brushing my teeth with my left hand. We get so used to things, doing things a certain way. And then I remember this chiropractor said, hey, let me try these trigger injections, but I want you to know that we're using something that helps with inflammation for horses. And I said, I'm game, I'm open. But when I told him, my friends were like, horses? I told my regular doctor, why would you do that? They use it on horses.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm just following my intuition, my inner guidance.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 to 3 sessions, that's why I do this now. And this has been over 2 years that I've been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The point is that when we trust and we develop and we learn how to listen to our inner self, to our intuition, it knows exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like our body knows what we should be eating. It's different for everyone. Your body tells you when you've exercised enough or when you need to get up off the couch and do something.
Mm-hmm.
Our body speaks to us, but we don't listen because it's a quiet voice. It's not that loud voice that we hear in our outer world. It's more of a quiet voice. So we have to go into that quiet space to hear it.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. I hurt my back yesterday because I wasn't listening to my quiet voice. Because I was exercising and I was pushing to go further.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because my wife, even before I went to the gym, told me, take it easy today.
Yeah.
Don't. So there were many parts and messages from the universe
signs,
just
right?
being like,
Yeah.
hey, don't do the thing. And I will say I took it easier, but not easy enough. And it was on the very last part when it happened, I went, you were told. You were even telling yourself in the middle of this, and yet you still did it.
I'm going to tell you one quick thing.
Mm-hmm.
You sound so much like me. I mean, because I love to exercise. And I'm like, just one more step, but I was skiing, so I learned to ski. By the way, let me back up for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So every time I have a challenge, something challenges me, some fear that I have, I always set out to test the waters so that I could overcome and move through that fear. And I've pretty much done that my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And so skiing was one of those things. It's like, there's no way I'm going to be way up there on top of that mountain. There was a fear of that. The same thing with scuba diving. The only reason I took up scuba diving and then fell in love with it I would feel claustrophobic, that fear of not being able to breathe, And so I said, that's it. I'm going to scuba dive, jumped in that water, and that was it. Overcame that fear and just opened up a whole new world for me. So the same thing with skiing. I took up skiing, fell in love with it. But then one day I'm, at the end of the day, and I was doing so great. I was always an intermediate skier, which was fine. I'm just going to go way up there where those people are. This is the last run for the day. And my body was tired, and something was saying, you're tired. Why don't you take a break? And then that other voice was like, no, you can do this. So I went up, and all of a sudden there was this bowl that just went down. You could barely even see the end of it. And as I made a turn, I started to drop into the edge of that and fell. And my ski twisted, and I tore my ACL. So I'm laying on the top of the edge of this bowl. People are going by on top, and I'm going, help, help, help. Anyway, long story short, finally they came and got me and took me down and said, you tore your ACL. But the voice is always there. I mean, it was clearly telling me, don't do this last run, just like with you yesterday. We just have to learn how to pay attention. And I think that can come. Over time, the more you do everything, anything repetitive in life becomes a habit or behavior, right? So listening to that voice, trusting it, going with it. If you do that X amount of times, it becomes more the norm.
It also reminds me of my first ever skiing story. We did some cross-country skiing when I was growing up. I did ice skating because my brother was into hockey, but I never did skiing. And I went with my girlfriend at the time, first time ever skiing. And so it's very similar to ice skating to certain degrees. I was comfortable with it. And by the end of the day, I said, you know what, I'm going to do a black diamond because I can do this.
Yeah.
I didn't injure myself, but I think I fell probably 20 times.
Right.
And it was just like all over the place. But there comes also that point where you're going, well, the only way to go is down. I'm not going to hike up and then there's only one way kind of down. Luckily, it was more of just a funny thing. I didn't try another one after that.
Right.
But it was good. I have a possibly difficult question, or maybe it's just a complicated question for you. So much of the time we hear in terms of meditation, of being present in the moment, of where don't be so much worried about the past, don't be so concerned with the future.
Right.
Be present here in the moment. You finish off the book with an interesting phrase. It's not the very last phrase of the book, but it is within the final chapter of this idea that we're not cognizant of what we're doing now and how it might affect the future. For example, the impacts that we might have on the planet and what that's doing to the future and why we need to be changing what we're kind of doing now. Yeah. And to me, it's kind of this awareness of, so do we start with just being present in this moment, and then we need to expand our awareness of how this moment affects the future? Because in a way, we do need to be aware of the future.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be present in the moment. I was just wondering if you could kind of open that up a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, there are a lot of things I can say about that. But yes, of course, being present is one of the most powerful things we can do. It's the best way to live our lives. We're present with each other right now, right? If we were both thinking about something else in the past or the future, we wouldn't be having this conversation as we are heart to heart. However, you're right. Yes, we do have to have some thought and awareness. And that was the key word. You said awareness of the future. Because to me, when we say awareness, it's more like a knowing and observing without allowing it to disturb your present moment. So I always think of, when I have a visual of myself or someone else, I always feel that we have this awareness. And awareness to me, I'm very visual and very demonstrative. So for me, like right now, as I'm sitting here talking with you, I have chosen to be present with you. But if I want to, I can also still be present with you, but I can have some awareness of the past, and I can have an awareness of the future. So therefore, whatever I am discussing with you, what we're talking about, I can tweak that conversation or the experience, if you will, so that it can actually have an effect on the future, on the path ahead. But that's me. I don't know if you've heard of the quantum field or, okay, the energy field. Well, over the years of, just walking the spiritual path and having these experiences, it just kept growing and growing organically until I became aware of, the energy field around us, all of us. And also the different dimensions that I would go into meditation and I would automatically just find myself in another space, and I would be told, this is the fifth dimension, this is the 12th dimension, you're now outside the matrix, and now there's this tunnel in front of you, and and this is where you come in when you're born, and this is where you go out when you die, and so I've had all these journeys that have taken me even through that tunnel to another side. I don't talk about that every day. It's not my everyday conversation, but the great thing about that is I have access to all of this. And if I am working with you as a client, it's like, oh, maybe I can take a piece from here and see how this can help you or help me in my everyday life. So I always bring it back to present, whether it's something from the past that needs to be healed, or we need to create something in the future and bring it back to present. So I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but I wanted to share something with you that I do as a practice for myself. So no matter how much we work on ourselves, as long as we're alive, we're in school. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be stuff that comes up all the time. And there are times when I even think like, wait a minute, I worked on that years ago. That's done. It's like, no, there's still pieces of that left, And so when something comes up that is causing a block for me to move forward, I just do a visual of my past, whatever that situation was. And I say, thank you, you served me at that point, but I no longer need you. And I just, again, because I'm very physical, I do the little physical thing and let it go. But you could just say inwardly, quietly, I am releasing you. I don't need that energy anymore. And then when I want to create something for my present moment, but that will have an effect on my future, I can actually go with the right side of my hand into my future self and see whatever it is that I would like to see happen, whether it's for the world, whether it's for other people, whether it's about the war. We can all do this. We all have the ability to actually go in and create something more loving and positive that we'd like to see happen. And then we bring it into the present moment. The point is that, and there's a whole study about this, by the way, that the left represents our past, the right represents in the energy field our future, and of course the present. So because I've used that so often, now sometimes I will just be doing something else and I just go, yeah, this is what I want to see. And I always come back to my heart. I want to share something with you really quickly that, Greg Braden, right?
I don't.
Oh, okay. You got to look him up. So he came from a science background and combined the whole spiritual thing. Now he talks about dimensions and all these things, but wonderful, great education, wonderful speaker. But there's something that stood out for me that he said. He said, so I'm studying, I'm writing a book, and I heard that this Native American guy in New Mexico could make it rain. And so I wanted to see how he did that. He goes, so I go out with him. He takes me out into a big open area. He draws a circle, stands in the middle, closes his eyes for 2 minutes and goes like this. And then he comes out and he says, are you hungry? Let's go have lunch. And he said, I stood there like, wait a minute. I thought you were going to show me how to make it rain. And he says, it is going to rain. He says, I imagine the rain on my body. I imagine the mud on my feet. I saw the trees just singing from the rain falling down. I used all my whole being to create that in the next few days, it's going to rain. And then I walk away from it. I leave it alone because I trust that it will happen. So to me, what was so powerful to me, and why I remember that is that, and I used to do it. Okay, this is what I'd like to have happen. So I'm going to create this future and, bring it into the present and, okay, this is what's going to happen. But then I'd keep doing it over and over again. And that taught me that if you do it once with your whole being, you can see colors, you can feel it, you can smell it, you can everything using all your senses. And you trust that the universe, whatever you believe, that it will happen, then it will. But if you keep recreating it over and over again, it means that you haven't trusted at all. And that was very powerful for me. So now when I want to create something, I envision it, feel it, smell it, and then I just say, thank you, it's done. And I move on.
I think the other important thing, and we're told this again and again, but this idea that it was an instant. The rain didn't come right there, and then it will rain. It's going to come.
Right.
Just because it's not on your timeline does not mean it's not on a timeline.
Exactly.
By any means.
Exactly.
But I think that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah.
I don't want us to completely breeze past, because I know that I will get a lot of hateful comments. There won't be hateful comments of why I didn't ask you about exiting the Matrix, and that we just hopped and skipped past that very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And that was and mentioned all those things. I know that we could probably have a 2-hour discussion about the entirety of all of that.
Yeah.
But can you at least tell us
a little bit about that?
A little bit about it, going into the place of of saying this is where everybody comes in when they're born, going out, and then maybe even your journey through.
Sure.
Because a lot of people will be intrigued by that.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
and some of that is not in the book because it happened after the book, and it's just so wonderful. I mean, I have to truly say that I have challenges like everyone else in life, but I am happy. I am full of joy. I am at peace. I'm in acceptance of what comes my way.
Mm-hmm.
But that came with a lifetime of, opening up to the experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the spiritual experiences, every time I would meditate, I would go into some other space, and then, I would meet another being, or I would be shown something else. And I would always ask at the end, it's like, how can I use this to apply it to my everyday life? And it would always make sense to me. So I initially went to the 5th dimension. I was told I was in the 5th dimension, and that was what they called my spiritual hub. So like a train station. And literally I could see different entrances and exits. And other people who were part of my soul group, they called it, could be and come in and out of that space. And while I was in there, I met Michael the Archangel, Saint Germain showed up. I mean, there was like a slew of, it's like, hi, And I also saw things like, I don't know if you're familiar with, and I'm not totally familiar with it, but they called it the Akashic Records, which is, a lot of people study that and just focus on that, and where you can go in and actually look at the record of your life and your past and all of these things. And so if I wanted to, I could go in and look at my record. Interestingly enough, I didn't want to. As a matter of fact, if I want to, I could probably see the time of my leaving this physical life, and I could know a lot more things, but I don't want to, because I enjoy being fully present in each and every moment. I don't want any of that knowledge to take away from where I am presently. If it was something super important, I might go, okay, let me take a look. But I am totally happy with just being here presently. So that being said, I had this experience in that 5th dimension, and I could go there for a while. Then this council of 12 showed up, and I said, well, so who are you and why are you here? Well, we are the one that helps you with your challenges in life, with, as you said, you want to learn and grow, so we're responding. And so sometimes I would see them sitting like around a table, and they would go like this, tapping their hand, and I would go, what? Well, you knew what you were supposed to be doing, but you didn't do it. How come? And I go, Okay, I get it.
Was there anybody recognizable on the Council of 12? Or did they ever present names for any of them? Or just that was the Council of 12?
That was just a council of 12.
Okay.
And if I want to, I could probably go in and get specific information
Right.
and more. But I accepted them as like, they're here to support me in my learning and my growth.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm meditating again, and all of a sudden, I am driving to go work with some inner city kids, and I'm on the 101 freeway, and at 6 a.m. There was no traffic. And all of a sudden, these three beings, and I'm going to call them like three angels, showed up, and one was in the front of my car, the other two on the outside. And I'm driving and I'm going, okay, what's going on here? Who are you? And they said, we're the three angels. And I said, obviously. and so they said, we are going to take you now to the next level of awareness. And so I said, let me pull over. So I pulled over, and then of course my thinking mind is going, the three angels, this doesn't make sense, going through that process. So I decided to Google, what is the meaning of the three angels? And I can't recall exactly, but there was a belief, a religious group that believed that the three angels show up to take you to another level of awareness, something to that effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back and look it up again. But anyway, so I said, okay, so where are we going? And they took me across this bridge, if you will. At least that's what I saw in my mind. And now I am in this place called Sirius. And pardon my sense of humor, but I said, are you serious? By the way, the more spiritual you become, the more you have a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's funny
yeah.
You said the sixth sense is the intuition part. I've always joked that the sixth sense is the sense of humor.
Yeah.
Yes. And maybe they're linked, and maybe there are even more senses than six. Truthfully, that's what I think. There's far more than six senses. But
look at the Dalai Lama. Look at all those people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they have a sense of humor, So this is like permanent on my face. But anyway, so now I go to the Sirius, and I'm connecting with all these beings, and then they're telling me, we are your group souls. This is where, you came from. This is where you'll go to. And there's just like all this information happening at once. So what happens is, like, over a period of time, I'll go into a meditation and I'll go to a space and I'll get more information until it's time to move on. So then the next time, all of a sudden, there's this female, it's energy, but I know it's female. It feels very caring and nurturing, and the voice says, you're in the 12th dimension. You are out of the matrix. And so I kind of came back from that, go back a few times, and then she said, and then all of a sudden I see this tunnel in front of me. It's this white light, but it's like spinning. And I said, what's that? And she said, that's where you go when you pass, and that's where you come through when you're born. And so I immediately went, no, thank you, I'm not ready yet. I think I still have more time here. So it took me a few times, really, before I would be comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm ready to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, you have to leave your physical body here. Only your energy body can go through. Because of the density, you wouldn't be able to go through.
Mm-hmm. And
she said, it's okay, I'll take care of your physical body. You'll be fine and you can go. And all of a sudden, literally, I almost felt like I zoomed through this tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And I came through this other side of the tunnel, and there was just energy, just like hundreds of different energy beings, energy. And so everything, obviously there was no speaking, there was no voice, there was just a knowing. Mm. And so once I went through, I'm always an adventurer, by the way, even on Earth, right? So I'm like, okay, that's great. Now I want to go back and see if they're going to tell me something, or, So now I keep going, and I keep getting information and about my journey, my path, my purpose, things like that. And so far I have not been, I know there's more, mm-hmm. but that's where I am right now. And so every day when I go into meditation, I can, depend on whatever I'm working on, whatever's going on in my life, I can say, okay, today I'll go to the fifth dimension and talk to the Council of 12 and see if they're going to do this to me or have something to tell me. Maybe I'll go, there's like a crystal room where I can get healing.
Mm-hmm.
So some days, if my body's hurting, I can actually go into that crystal room and just lay there and have a healing. Or I can go further, or I can go visit on the 12th dimension, So I have this inner life
Mm-hmm.
that is so wonderful and beautiful, but I still have this outer life, and the two merge for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this is completely separate and I have this experience out here and now I come back and I have this different experience out here. What I have learned to do is to merge the two, because here's the key. Here's where I am at currently,
Mm-hmm.
is there never was a veil, that everything happens here. And our thinking mind and the choices we make can cause us to either separate things or to bring things together. And when we learn how to understand and really know that everything is one, everything is connected, our life is effortless.
Mm-hmm.
Then we truly understand how powerful we are as human beings. So life becomes totally effortless and amazing. So that's what I've learned to do. That I'm not just having these experiences out here and then I come back and I, have my everyday life experiences. The two are one. So I could be taking a hike in the woods and suddenly connect with my, that world, my inner world, as I call it,
Mm-hmm.
and still be taking my hike. So I teach meditation. I do mindfulness walks and guided meditation at UCLA Retreat Center.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who've never meditated, but when I'm taking them, guiding them through the woods, I will get this intuitive sense. I connect with my inner world, so to speak, and I will have some guidance as to exactly what to say to them.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time when I follow that, everybody comes out of it going, wow, that was great, great experience,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of takeaways, from that experience. And that's what's important to me. What are the takeaways?
Mm-hmm.
What can I apply? What can I share with my clients, that can help them live their best lives?
Very interesting. I've got two intriguing questions that
Uh-oh.
I'd be remiss to ask.
Okay.
So the first one is about when you had to go through the tunnel and kind of leave the physical body. Was there an absence of sensations because you no longer were able to feel? So it was just because you were saying there was no vocal.
Yeah.
There's energy. I'm guessing you were
Yeah.
just. And were you seeing this energy, or it was just a feel this energy? Like there was an awareness of the energy because
An awareness.
you had no eyes, no ears,
Right.
nothing.
Right. There was an awareness of the energy, but it's so, what's the word? It's not even a knowing. It's just, it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you say it just is,
Right.
that's what it was. It just is.
Given that the hub, it has so many entrances and exits, I'm sure you would have told the story if it was there, but I
Yes.
just have to ask, have you ever encountered somebody else who was, let's call it, visiting the hub from Earth at
That I
any
happen
point?
to know.
Well, either happened to know or just interacted with that, still alive, and they were just also hanging out in the hub and just happened to be there at the same time. Anything like that ever happen?
Well, so talk about choice.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I'm in my inner world or outer world or wherever I am, always choice.
Right.
And that's the thing that I love. I get to choose. So when I'm in there, I'm usually busy taking care of things I forgot to do or should have done, or, I didn't pay attention to. But what I have noticed that's happened, and I didn't actually set out to do it, set the intention, but people who have passed that I've known, I've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
That are part of what they call my group souls. I've seen them in the hub,
Mm-hmm.
in the spiritual hub. What I have done is I have chosen, when I am working with someone or on someone, or maybe there's some sort of challenge, with someone, I take them knowingly on. I don't think they know I'm doing it, but you know, so just be aware. You could be in my spiritual hub. So I take them into my spiritual hub because there I am away from all the thoughts and beliefs and all the stuff swirling around here and the emotions, and I can work with them on a more deeper spiritual level. So, for instance, if I'm having a challenge with someone, you know, I envision them in my hub and I'm dealing with them from that space, from that level. So I've only had maybe a couple of people that I've noticed, and they were pretty much like, hi, we're moving on. Because in the hub, people can go to different dimensions, to different places, but this is sort of like the meeting space that you have to sort of go through. It's like going across the border, you know, it's like, let me see your card and your passport before I let you in, so to speak.
Very, very interesting. So kind of tying a lot of this together of the energy, the healing powers of it, even in the book, you said that while you could sometimes have this feeling of goodness and that would make your hands feel better, it was always the best and the most channeling when you were giving to others, when you were trying to heal others and letting all of that go through you, and all of that. How do you prefer to interact with people when you're helping clients? Is it just you have to intuition what they need, and then going there? Do you ever tell them, hey, I know you don't feel this right now, but here's what you need? When do you push, or do you let them? How do you navigate that?
Right, great question, because I truly like to gently walk people forward. It's kind of like if you were to physically hold someone's hands and say, hey, let's take a step together. And once they feel grounded and they have both feet on the ground, then hey, let's take the next step together. You know, so when someone shows up, I listen intently to everything they're saying because it's real for them. They're having this challenge, that challenge. You know, they're feeling depressed. They are not feeling love for themselves, you know, whatever it might be. And that's a truth for them. So I honor that. I honor that completely. And I listen to that. I pay attention to that. But I very slowly try to guide them to discover that all of these things they're experiencing is here. It's in that hard drive. It's from life experience, you know, traumas, things like that. And that does not define them. So I slowly, over time, guide them to notice so that they can actually feel and recognize and notice that there's something else. If you peel away all the layers of, I'm sad, I am depressed, I don't feel loved, if you start to peel away all those layers, what are you left with? Love, light, you know, and so I finally get them to that place where they can still have all these other experiences. They're still going through the emotions and motions, but now they know that there's something else, that's what defines them. Joy, love, peace, that's what defines them. And when I get them to that place, all the other stuff begins to fall away. So it's a guidance and like sort of holding their hand and bringing them forward. Some people show up and they're really open to going down that path because they are aware of it. They just never had the guidance, you know, the knowledge. And other people, it takes more time, you know, because it's like, wait a minute, what do you mean? That exists within me, you know? So it takes a little more time.
Not to contradict what we talked about, but this reminds me of this peeling away of the layers of something that I like to do in my presentations. It's a little tool that I like to give for my presentation, is repeatedly asking the question, why? I sometimes call it the child's question when children just always go, why? Why? But it's more so you repeatedly ask yourself the question, why, to each answer that you give to find that deeper truth. And I usually say I start with the question of why do we move or why do you move? And then you go all the way down. And it comes down to, you want to be free, you know, you want to be loved, you want to be happy, joy, whatever. And so I find that same thing. And I go, okay, that is what you use to motivate everything else. That is what you use to motivate the joy and all, the job, the money, whatever it is. Like you said, we live in this world. It's still there. Yes, we're on a different rhythm and a different cycle, but we have to exist in this world as well.
Of course,
to a large degree. So that, I always love hearing from my guests things that affirm other things that I do as well, because I go, oh, good, I'm doing the right thing.
Of course, no, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful way, you know. And again, because I'm very sort of hands-on and visual, it's been hard to. Well, it's actually been perfect now working on Zoom, because now I'm working with people all over, right? And I've also learned how to intuit them, how to actually send them energy. You know, everything that I've been doing one-on-one with people. So it's working out just fine. But I still love getting together with people. I love sitting in front of someone. But that being said, I've even done things where I've had people put on a backpack, took them for a hike, because I do something called Inner Vision Quest in nature. And I have them talk about what they're feeling. So I've been feeling depressed. Okay, pick up a rock that represents that and put it in your backpack. I've been feeling this, you know, challenged by this. Okay, you choose a rock and you put it in the backpack. And I don't tell them what they're going to do with the backpack. So after a while, they've got this backpack full of rocks. And I say, okay, now put it on your back. And then we start walking in nature. And of course, there's a complaint like, what? I didn't know I would have picked up a smaller rock. Okay, you know. But obviously this represented or meant something to you. It was a bigger problem. And so as we hike, I walk them through a technique of like, so how would you, if you were able to drop one of these rocks and leave it behind and just say, thank you, you served a purpose. And now I want to let you go. You know, so I walked them through a process of releasing and letting go. And by the end of our journey, sometimes it could take a full day. Sometimes it's just a couple of hours. They start to empty that backpack. And then I say, okay, I want you to choose something that will represent who you are now, that you have released all of this. And let that represent the joy, the lightness you're feeling now in your body because you have emptied yourself of all of this. And so they usually choose something in nature and I say, okay, now put that in your backpack. And I take them through a ritual and a process with that. It's just a beautiful, beautiful ceremony to take people through.
That is amazing. That's wonderful, and brings us perfectly to, if people want to do that, if people want to find more out about you, work with you, experience more Anne in their life, what is the best way for them to find you, to get in touch with you?
So probably going to my website, which is risingawareness.com. Or I'm not that kind of person that I want people to go and do everything on Calendly and I don't even know, and then they just show up. I'll talk to you. So they can call me. My phone number is 310-433-2083. They can email me at ionsanne@gmail, and that's IONSANNE@gmail.com. So there's many, many different ways to find out. They can ask questions. And I always like to have a very short conversation before I work with someone, because I want them to feel like they resonate with me and that I am the person that can help them, you know, move forward in their life. And so I do have that conversation before I even set up a session. So that's some of the ways. I also have a YouTube channel. And every Tuesday morning for the last 2 years, I get on Facebook Live and I do something called Wisdom Talk and Meditation. And it's under 10 minutes. And I show up and I talk about whatever comes to my mind. And then I guide everyone through a very short meditation to sort of start out their day. So that's another way to find me.
Wonderful. As always, we'll have the links in the show notes. But I wonder, because you mentioned, and I always like to point these little things out because I think they're so important for good coaches, for good guides, is that you want to make sure that the fit is right.
Yes.
And the question that I want to ask there is, you can tell an actual story or just answer yes or no. Have you ever met with somebody and and they might have been like, I want to work with you. I need to work with you. It's definitely right. And you go, it's not right. Like, there might be a different person I should direct you to. I'm not the one for you. This is not right. Has that happened?
Sure. Great question. No.
No. Okay.
But the reason I see that is because what I have found is that I don't have the answer. There's like some unseen thing out there in the universe that brings the right people to me. So I would have to say 100% of the time, the people that come to me were a fit. You know, we can end up doing one session. We can end up working together for 6 months, but they're always a fit. And here's the thing I've been noticing is that because of my history, my life story, my journey, having so many experiences, that as people are talking to me, I am inwardly going, I know, I understand. I've had that challenge. I've been there. So not only am I speaking to them from, you know, I had years of education, you know, studying clinical hypnotherapy and all of the things that I do, but it also comes from life experience. So I feel like I'm walking in their shoes as I move them forward in their life.
Beautiful. And it's true, honestly. Going through the book and reading the book and then hearing all of your stories, there are so many different things. There are so many lifetimes lived within just one, truthfully.
Yeah.
If there's anything else that you want to leave people off with, is there any little last nuggets of wisdom or anything else that you want to finish off?
Wisdom, huh? Okay.
No.
Well, yeah, I think what immediately came to mind, and again, it's following that intuition and go with the first thing that comes to mind, is I think I ended the book with "You matter." You know, you matter. And what I mean by that is that it's if you were to sort of imagine this like a huge pie, if you will, that we're all individual pieces. And it's important that we focus on our journey as an individual. But without that one piece, there's not the wholeness. And in order to function, you know, at a high level of joy and love and light and all of those things, we have to understand that we, each of us, each piece is very important. It's like putting a puzzle together. It's never complete unless you have all the pieces, right? So every one of us matters. We have an important role to play, whether it's, you know, going into the grocery store and saying, hi, how are you, to the person checking you out. And some people might think that's nothing, that's minuscule, but that matters. You've just changed somebody's life completely. So your journey doesn't have to be like, I've written a book or, you know, I'm speaking to thousands of people. It could be just smiling at someone, helping somebody with their bag. All of those things are important.
Beautifully said. And to end with a little bit of levity, what kind of pie do you think it would be? If you had to pick the type of pie that this metaphor is, what type of pie would you?
Pie or puzzle? Okay.
Or pie. We'll go with pie.
You want the pie.
And I'm wondering if it's maybe just your favorite pie. What kind of pie is it going to be for Anne? It doesn't have to be that same pie for everybody.
Well, okay. So I'm going to have to go back then and say chocolate cake.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. That's fair.
Or chocolate pie, or because I'm a chocoholic. So, so it'd have to be a big chocolate cake. Yes, absolutely. And the reason is that I'm sure you know this, that chocolate releases those good endorphins. That's why we're all so addicted to it. Yeah, so it'd have to be chocolate cake.
I would agree. Chocolate, yes. Yeah. I would take chocolate cake over pie also.
There you go. Absolutely.
It's very fair. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was wonderful. Thank you
for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I love the connection. Thank you.
I personally got so much from that discussion. I am at a time in my life right now where getting more intuitive with myself and following my personal intuition has been a goal. And this was almost like that confirmation that she was talking about for her. That yes, this is what I need to be doing. And by the way, here's a how. Here's where you start and here's where you go from here. I think there's a lot to be taken away for going, hey, sometimes you don't need a reason. If you truly feel it and trust yourself, that's enough. That is the reason. And I know that I'm going to be making some more decisions and taking maybe different paths depending on how that feels. If you support this kind of message, if this is what you want to do and you want to move through life and love your movement through life, have passion around what you do, please comment, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things, because that's what really helps this podcast. That's what helps it get out to more people so that more of us can move along our paths. And as always, until next time.